And it's Kim Kreitzer for Cam. That's media in our weekly Army football huddle. The Army Black Knights are going to play for the American Athletic Conference Championship on Friday night at Michie Stadium against Tulane, the Green Wave. And it is really the first time that Army has hosted a conference championship game, much less played in one. When they were in Conference USA 20 years ago, they never really had much success, much less got to a conference championship game. But here in the first year, they have done well with a 10-1 record, unbeaten in the conference, 8-0. So let's introduce our huddle members tonight. We've got Colonel Sam Houston from the Beat Navy studio in Huntsville, Alabama. Colonel, how are you?
Oh, yeah, I'm good, Ken, and looking forward to being up at West Point for the historic hosting of the American Athletic Conference Championship game at Michie Stadium. And I'm going through the decision-making process of what Army gear to wear to make sure that I am nice and warm naturally instead of just from the infusion of adult beverages.
Okay. Maybe we'll get you a Canvas Media parka to wear. So, okay, Richard Miller down in Florida. How are you?
Very well, Ken. Looking forward to Friday night. It is going to be electric at Michie Stadium.
Yeah. Richard, you're going to get to watch it on the ABC television network. I guess we could call it the big ABC. Um, and that's a phenomenal opportunity. You know, I was talking, Sam, with the superintendent and at his last Board of Visitors meeting, he talked about how valuable this television exposure, media exposure is from the Army football team this year, from playing Notre Dame at Yankee Stadium, and then now playing in a conference championship, well, leading up to the Army Navy game. It is phenomenal how much attention the team is getting.
Yeah, I mean, success breeds success. And I got to be honest, we've reached that time of year again where the coaching carousel rumor mill is flying around again. And of course, we know whose name is always being thrown around. And one thing about this season is that games so far, games upcoming, create a lot of revenue for the Army Athletic Department. And we certainly hope that if need be, there's some restructuring done with some more money to keep our favorite coach around.
Yeah, well, I understand he had not that long ago got a contract extension, and with an increase, I have to imagine. But yeah, when you are successful in college sports, your coaches will be in play for opportunities at bigger universities that have bigger budgets. Let's run down the UTSA game, a great win for Army, and 29-24. Game just running down the scoring. Army got on the scoreboard first, a 41-yard pass to Darrell Robinson from Bryson Daly. And then UTSA matched it with a 53-yard drive and a touchdown by their running back High. And then Army got on the scoreboard with a Troy Granati 39-yard field goal. UTSA matched that in the second quarter with a 33-yard field goal by Sandell. And Granati got another field goal, 35 yards in the second quarter, to give Army a 13-10 lead. Third quarter, UTSA was able to get a 23-yard touchdown pass from McGowan to McQuinn, and that gave them the lead, 17-13. Troy Gennady got a field goal to get Army within one, 17-16, opened up the fourth quarter. And after UTSA failed on a 4th and 1 at their own 16-yard line, the Army defense stopped them. It only took Bryson Daly 5 plays to get the 16 yards, and that gave Army a 22-17 lead. I got to ask you, Sam, we all in the press box were amazed that UTSA went for 4th and 1 on their own 16-yard line um, when they're up by a point in a game like this. So, what was your thought?
Well, I mean, it was very gutsy. I wasn't surprised though, and there were a number of reasons for that. First off, is that UTSA had been having some success running the ball a little bit and converting third and fourth downs previously in the game. And so I think that their analytics on their sideline really believed that Army's depleted defensive line would not be up to the task to stop them if they made an attempt. And given the yardage, it was, just over a yard that they had to cover in order to convert. The second reason was this, and that is that Army's offense was starting to gain some traction in the second half. And UTSA knew that if they did not convert on that fourth down, that there was a possibility that they could not see the ball again until late in the fourth quarter with Army with the lead. And so they didn't want to risk having that as a possibility. So they went for it. And of course, we know what happened. Fortner and the rest of the defense came in and basically hit the ball carrier at the line of scrimmage, and he didn't go any further and turnover on downs. And Army had an extremely short field, and they took of it because 5 plays later they were in the end zone
With the lead, 17-22. I thought that just really was the turning point in the game. So we'll take that decision by UTSA. And that was with 12 minutes, 19 seconds left to go. Less than 2 minutes later, Army got the ball back, and Bryson Daly got a 42-yard rush after an interception. And then UTSA did score quickly. They went 75 yards on 4 plays and scored on a 6-yard rush. And that made the score 29-24. But when UTSA got the ball back, Army got an interception, and that really sealed off the game. So a couple of defensive plays by Army really made the difference on Saturday. And looking at the rushing, we were talking a little bit about Bryson Daly having run, what was it, 39 times against Notre Dame? And this game, he ran 27 times. That did include several, I think it's 5 times that he went back intending to pass and ended up running the ball, according to our chat with Cody Worley, their coordinator today. Noah Short, 14 carries. He got 51 yards. And Kanye Udo had 7 catches, 7 rushes for 16 yards. Not a big day for Kanye Udo. Terrell Robinson carried 5 times, only gained 9 yards. Jack Rendina and Hayden Reed had a couple of carries too. Bryson Daly passing ball, 10 of 17 for 190 yards and a touchdown. That being the 41-yard touchdown in the first quarter to Tyrell Robinson. And receiving, Casey Reynolds had 4 catches for 81 yards, longest for 22. Tyrell Robinson caught 3 for 46. Noah Short caught 2 for 35, and Liam Fortner had a big catch in the second half for 28 yards. So Army was able to get the ball out to their perimeter running backs and wide receivers, Sam. After they really were closed down by Notre Dame.
Yeah, somewhat. And there was a good dispersion of the ball, especially earlier in the game. But UTSA took a page out of Notre Dame's uh, defensive strategy in that UTSA basically stacked 9 and 10 men in the box on about every single play. And they relied on the defensive speed of their two cornerbacks to control the perimeter game. And one of their cornerbacks had a career day. I'm trying to remember his name, but he was all over the field. I think he had 3 tackles for loss, and he was just flummoxing the Army perimeter blocking because he was flying around the ball and just had a season of a game against Army controlling the perimeter. But we did see some exploitation of the perimeter, especially on the very first drive that Army mounted when they converted 3 fourth downs. But what was more unique about Army's offense and their strategy, their game plan this time around, was that it was clear that Cody Worley and the team had the offense prepared to expect what UTSA was going to do. And that was UTSA was basically challenging Army to pass the ball. And Army did just that. You and I were talking just before we started, and we believe that that was probably the most passes by an Army quarterback in quite some time. And it wasn't just that Daly was passing the ball, is that he was having success passing the ball. I'd have to go back and look at the number of pass plays that resulted in converted 3rd or 4th downs. Not to mention there were some long gainers in the mix on passes where Daly's touch with the ball was impeccable. He couldn't have thrown the ball any better to the receiver. And Casey Reynolds, by the way, you talk about a silent warrior who's putting together an amazing body of work this season at wide receiver. He reminds me of, the Pose or Isaiah Alston, who departed the team last year. But he's making his own statement on the field just about every play. He's got hands like Brett Bolitnikoff out there, and it's pretty impressive to see. Plus, the guy's not using stickum. So, that's pretty impressive. But
Why doesn't he use stickum?
What's that?
Why doesn't he use stickum?
That's not allowed anymore.
Not allowed anymore.
A long time ago. Yeah, you can't use stickum. But Tanya Udo, unfortunately, and Jake Rendina for that matter. Jake Rendina got more touches at the ball in this game than he has in a lot of games so far this season. I mean, he had 4 carries. And he doesn't see the ball much. He's mainly a blocking back. But between Kanye Udo and Jake Rendina, we saw how effectively UTSA was blocking the inside between the tackles. The reason Kanye Udo didn't see the ball more was because there just was no creases there that could be exploited. They were doing an excellent job in their run defense, stuffing the middle, tying up blockers, not being out of position, and controlling the gaps. And so eventually, by the time the second half rolled around, Army's offense was making a few more adjustments to take advantage of a couple of crease opportunities that were existing around end on the perimeter. And that's eventually what led to Daly's 40-yard touchdown jaunt with Connor Finucane in the lead, just putting a key block on somebody that sprung Daly on down the field. So it was a very gritty performance by the offense, and I think that we've got to give the special teams some credit. Army attempted 4 field goals in this game, and up until and they converted 3 of them, and the one that they did not convert was a 47-yarder that just barely drifted wide left. And I tend to believe that maybe the wind had a little bit to do with that one. But, these were important field goals because of the fact that Army was finding some tough going and they get inside the red zone and were unable to convert touchdowns, but they were still putting points on the board when they needed to, and that was what was important.
Okay, what did you see, Richard?
What I really saw from a game where a very close game, and I think an exciting game. Army, converting, on down. Also, again, passing yards. Even despite, I think I saw UTSA passing, especially a little bit more. Army was still able to, I think, to control, the clock, and really, relying a lot on, Bryson Daly and Noah George running game ability, even despite other than that, mainly like Kana Uda, only at nobody else had really, I think, a strong running game. I think it was also a strong play of the Army defense that had to step up at eventually crunch
Okay.
time, and they had also scored 13 points in the fourth corner to really help them with their lead and to also help them stave off maybe a late UTSA rally, even despite a strong yard game from Owen McCowan with 207 yards in that game in this
Yeah.
game.
Yeah, just talking to the defense. Good point, Richard. Andon Thomas had an amazing day with 14 tackles.
Mm-hmm.
Inside linebacker, and Chance Keith, uh, kind of very under the radar, but he had 7 tackles on the game at the outside linebacker spot. Caleb Fortner on inside, he had 5 tackles, and he also had a key sack. Um, Casey Larkin, 3 tackles, and two of which were for losses. Um, I think, Sam, one thing that stands out is only 1 sack on the game by the defense. Although there were 3 tackles for loss, as I said, 2 by Casey Larkin. They getting enough of a pass rush, do you think?
Well, you got to keep this in mind about this particular game. Army's defense is limping right now. They've got a lot of injuries. They've got a lot of hobbled players out there. And where this is most felt is along the defensive line. I mean, they had 2 starters that were out um, for the entire game, and they had to rotate in. I think I saw where they had to rotate in 20 different defensive players. 20 different defensive players had an opportunity to be on the field for snaps in this game. So it was literally a next man up type of approach to football that had to work because UTSA came into this game red hot. Their offense has been averaging over for the past 3 or 4 games. They've been averaging well over, like I think I saw 45 points a game, and they've been very prolific. I watched their last game when they played against North Texas, and they just poured the points on, especially in the second half. And let's not forget that they came back and beat Memphis, the very same Memphis team that beat Tulane this past Saturday. UTSA beat. So these guys know how to move the ball. They've got a legit running attack as well as their passing attack. And their quarterback came into the game quite prolific. I think he had about 2,600 yards, maybe 2,300 yards passing, 23 touchdowns, and against 7 interceptions. He got shut down pretty good. And he threw 2 interceptions. And then let's not forget their mental error that they had when they believed that the timeout had been called as it was getting close to halftime. And they mishandled a snap that Army recovered that gave Army new life to go kick that field goal at the end of the first half. So Army's defense, that's a patchwork crew out there. They're putting the best guys they have available on the field. These guys are continuing to get banged up, but they're still delivering results. And it says a lot to the depth that exists on the Army defensive side of the ball and how ready these players are to play when they get the opportunity to go in. I believe that the first interception that Army had, the player who intercepted the pass was in because Casey Larkin had gotten injured on the previous play.
Yeah, Gavin Shields.
So, and then let's not forget that Shields came back into the game later on, and Shields was the one that broke up the pass that Casey Larkin intercepted. That sealed the game. So, good job all around by the
Yeah, I
defense.
think that last interception went to Colin Madison. We talked to him in the post game bit, but yeah, defense played solid, um, and so they're getting a chance to recover. And I talked a little bit to Dave Woody tonight. He said, it was a little bit of a challenge in being a short week. Playing Friday night instead of Saturday, they had to move all their preparation up a day.
Yeah, and let's not forget that Tulane got an extra day over Army because Tulane played Friday night or Thursday night against Memphis, so they got 2 full extra days of
Two
practice.
full extra days, yeah. Well, they got to come up to New York and play in what looks like it's going to be sub-freezing weather on Friday
Yeah,
night.
we'll chat about that.
And
But,
Coach Monken's going to put fans behind their benches so they can feel the full fury of the temperature.
yeah,
Have the air
so
conditioning on.
all in all, this victory over UTSA was the grittiest win that Army's had this season. I would have said it would have been the North Texas game, but this game really was a true gut check on the part of both sides of the ball. It was team effort. And when I say team effort, I mean defense, offense, special teams. Every one of them had to contribute to this because UTSA came ready to play. They had a good game plan on both sides of the ball. They proved that they could move the ball really fast. And in the case where Army took a 29-17 lead, it only took them about a minute and 16 seconds to score to get them right back in the game. Just when you thought that Army was going to coast the rest of the fourth quarter, it was no, you better grab some more popcorn and start sweating bullets again. And this became even tighter when UTSA held Army late in the game, when Army had the potential of running the clock out, and they got stopped. They got stopped cold on a 3rd and 10, had to kick that 47-yard field goal that they missed, and it gave UTSA the opportunity to drive right back down the field and score and potentially win the game. This was only compounded by this uncharacteristic, unsportsmanlike call on the sideline that gave UTSA an extra 15 yards on a pass completion along the sideline. Army only committed 3 penalties in the game, and 2 of these were pretty costly. And what I mean by that is the first one was a very uncharacteristic penalty on Bryson Daly after the T-Rob touchdown. And
What happened on that?
they never showed on the television broadcast. They never showed what happened. What I heard from people who were in the stands that were posting and things like that was that, if you recall, earlier in that drive, Bryson Daly had completed a pass, and in the process of completing that pass, he had been hit helmet to helmet and slammed to the ground, and was looking at the ref, wondering why there was not a roughing the passer call. And even the announcers on the game agreed that met all of the definition of roughing the passer. Didn't understand why the flag was not thrown. And all I can speculate is that maybe and I don't know for sure, but I think that what happened is that the UTSA sidelines were razzing Bryson Daly after that, what should have been a roughing the passer call that was not called. And so in return, when he threw that touchdown, he looked at the UTSA bench and said something to the UTSA bench that got flagged.
Okay. Yeah, I heard something like that also. It's unfortunate. Richard, tell us a little bit about some of the games in rivalry week in college football.
Let's see. some of the games in rivalry week from college football. Well, a game that I'm sure all of us were, paying attention to, despite despite a little bit of, again, extracurricular activity at the end of the game. Michigan goes to 7-5, defeating number 2 Ohio State. Only their second loss of the season. Michigan wins it 13-10. Number 1 Oregon defeated Washington 49-21. Oregon is now 12-0 on the season. Texas is 17-7 victory over number 20 Texas A&M. Texas goes to 11-1. Penn State 11-1, defeating Maryland 44-7. Also, you have Syracuse 9-3, defeating Miami 42-38. Number 8 Tennessee 36-23 over Vanderbilt, which is 500 at 6-6. Tennessee goes to 10-2. Also, you have number 15 South Carolina 17-14 over number 12 Clemson, which is 9-3. Number 13 Auburn defeated Alabama 28-14. And also, you have as in another game, you have Baylor 45-17 over Kansas. Baylor is 8-4. Kansas is 5-7.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Now the business at hand. Tulane coming in 9-3, 7-1 in the American Athletic Conference. They kind of botched their chance to host this game by not winning against Memphis on Thanksgiving evening, given a home game. But, you know, Sam, one of the things that's interesting about their team is they're coached by John Summerall, who was the Troy coach that beat Army 2 games the last couple of years, 2022 down in Alabama. And then last year at Mikey Stadium, shut out West Point 19-0. He knows a little bit about playing Jeff Monken's team.
Yeah, I'll take that with a grain of salt. And why I say that is because when Army lost to Troy down in here in Alabama, that was before they stopped the cut blocking rules. You know, they changed the blocking rules on triple option football, and Army was running an offense that on paper may looked a little bit similar, but it was very different. It was also run very different. It was also called very different. And then last year, Army was in the middle of their experiment with the the RPO type offense that they ended up scrapping this year and returned to triple option. So, he does have experience for sure against Army, and more importantly, he has experience against Jeff Monken. And then there is also another factor in there, and that is this: Tulane has been Jeff Monken's kryptonite. In 11 years at West Point, Army has never beaten Tulane. As a matter of fact, some of those games have been some pretty serious drubbings. And I recall a game in New Orleans 2 or 3 years ago where Tulane ran Army off the field. And I remember a game at Mikey where Army came into the game 3-1 and got humiliated by Tulane. So, there is a few, peripheral factors that go into this game that deal with the psyche. And that is, you got to get off the schneid. You got to beat Tulane. And Army's going to have that opportunity this Friday night at Mikey Stadium. And, I think Jeff Monken's ready to atone for every single previous matchup that Army's had against Tulane since he's been head coach.
Yeah, you look at their stats, they're averaging scoring 39 points a game, giving up only 18. So it's a pretty good differential between the two. Rushing, pretty balanced offense. They rush 212 yards a game, and they pass for 216. So they're averaging 429 a game, while giving up 125 yards less, 304. They dominate time of possession like Army tries to do, 33 minutes. They're 52% on third down conversions, 50% on fourth down, and only 5 fumbles and 34 sacks. So they're aggressive on defense. We saw their quarterback play against Memphis, Darian Menza, 167 rating, completes 66% of his passes, 20 touchdown passes, and averages throwing 209 yards a game, and run 50 times for 206 yards and 1 TD. Big time running back, Makidia Hughes, 1,326 yards on the season, averages 5.4 yards a carry, and 108 yards a game, half their running game. So they're pretty balanced on offense, Sam.
Yeah, they've got some great athletes. And in the American Athletic Conference, they've got some of the best athletes on offense of any of the teams. So there's no doubt they're a very prolific team. They can score quickly. They can also control the time of possession and control the clock. Mensa is that's his actual name. I don't know if he's a member of that society, but he plays very well. He's a very intelligent quarterback, and I believe he's a true freshman. So it's somebody that Army is going to see again, as early as next season. But they have their lapses, and in the Memphis game, they literally looked like they were flat, and it kind of reminded me of 2021. Army was having a great year. They had already beaten Air Force. They roll into MetLife Stadium, and for all intents and purposes, you think that they're going to, beat Navy and win the Commander in Chief trophy. And
Yep.
instead, they laid a dud. They just totally laid a turd on the MetLife Stadium floor and allowed Navy to stay in the game long enough to win it.
Yeah, I remember that
And
well.
walked away, you scratching your head, what happened just now, because this is the same team that had just gone to Liberty and basically ran Liberty off the field.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and so you would have thought that if Army had been firing on all cylinders and been ready, they would have smoked Navy that day, and they should have. And then they turned around and beat Missouri in the Armed Forces Bowl. So, college football is a strange thing. The Tulane team that got beat by Memphis on Thanksgiving Day is the same Tulane team that blanked Navy 35-0 on Navy's senior day. So they traveled to Annapolis and just absolutely wiped the Mids off the map. So, I'm saying this because Tulane is a team with which you're not sure which team you're going to get. If they're firing on all cylinders, they're going to be real hard to beat. And Army can do it. And Army has to be prepared for them firing on all cylinders. If they show up and they play like they did against Memphis, this game Friday night will be no contest. And Army will, be celebrating, midway through the fourth quarter. So, it's interesting to see what's going to happen. But as far as the athletes that Tulane brings to the table and the coaching, Tulane's coach is one of those up and coming coaches that's already being his name's already being thrown around for some, college carousel openings that are in existence right now, like Purdue. I've seen his name floated around there, and for a couple of other teams. So, people have noticed in college football land this young and upcoming coach, and they saw his success at Troy. They've seen what he's done at Tulane following Willie Fritz. Willie Fritz, who never lost to Jeff Monken. And, so I don't know, his days may be numbered at Tulane, but I guarantee you they want to get the conference championship, and they're beating themselves up every day right now that they did not earn home field advantage.
yeah. That was a big surprise that they had the problem against Memphis. They nearly scored a touchdown on a long pass play, and then they lost the ball on a fumble. And then
Twice,
a couple of plays
twice that
twice,
happened.
yeah. And that really cost them the chance to win that game and have a home game against Army, and us all heading down to New Orleans for the weekend. They have a really good linebacker named Tyler Grubbs, number 13, a senior. And he comes out of Louisiana Tech, where he had a a career making 244 tackles, made 53 for Tulane this year, including 3 sacks. And one of the things that Coach Summerall was mentioning was when he got to Tulane, they were hemorrhaging players who were going into the transfer portal, and he had to hold on to some and bring others in. And he obviously did a pretty good job of building a roster. I asked him a little bit about his schedule because early on, the second and third games here, they lost to Kansas State 34-22, I believe that is, or 34-27. And then they went to Oklahoma and they lost 34-19. 2 close games to power 4 conference members. Then they ran off 8 straight wins from Louisiana, South Florida, at North Texas, at Charlotte, and then, as you mentioned, the at Navy game before they lost to Memphis. So he's done a real good job putting that program together, coming aboard. And, nowadays you have to look at a team's roster and see, how long the players have been there. How many are transfers from other Division I schools, and then see how the team is fitting together. Some coaches are able to do it, some aren't. But obviously, whatever John Summerall is doing, it's working. So
Yeah.
it's going to be. Somebody asked in the press conference if the temperature at Mikey Stadium would bother him. And he said, sometimes you play in hot weather, sometimes you play in cold weather. It's just football. So, but I think it's a little bit of an impact for somebody coming up from the South to play in the Northeast,
Sure.
especially in a cold spell. But I'm sure they'll be ready to play.
Yeah. Now, one thing about your comments about, NIL and transfer portal is it's the reality of college football today, unless you play for a service academy. And so, and we've had this discussion in the huddle before, but what I will say is that as far as coaching is concerned, when you have a team like Tulane that clearly, and I'm not looking at their roster right now, I'm sure that they do have a lot of transfer portal folks on their team. The real task for any coach now is that, and rather than having players that you're developing through your own pipeline, you're continually having a fresh mix of a roster every year of people who've transferred and players that you did have who transferred out. So the real test on the coach is not just your knowledge of football and your ability to impart that knowledge of football to the players and how to run plays. It's the leadership aspect of the coach to be able to create a team cohesion on players who have not played together for very long. And so when you have a team like Tulane that has success, what it tells you is that they've got a head coach who's got that something extra, and it's called leadership and the ability to build teamwork on players on short notice. And that's a real key quality that makes him a very valuable asset on the coaching carousel community right now.
Yeah. Holding on to players, building some sense of continuity, or being able to install players quickly. And I think certainly for, the offensive and defensive lines, continuity makes a big difference. Makes a difference on defense, defensive backs being in a system.
Yeah.
Although, we know that, coaches come and goes, and even defensive coaches or offensive coordinators, and you have to adjust to that.
Yeah.
But I asked Cody Worley what he thought John Summerall had brought to Tulane from his Troy experience. He said, yeah, the defense looks very similar.
Yeah, so there's a familiarity there to prepare for. That's a good thing, especially on a short week.
Okay.
And I know Jack's not here tonight, but I did want to make mention of the fact, just as kind of a nod to the lesser service academies, and that is that both Navy and Air Force won their games this past week. And I watched Navy's game. I actually had predicted East Carolina was going to win. Navy found themselves about midway through the third quarter. Navy literally found their offense again, and they had a prolific about 10 minutes of play where they kind of put the game out of reach on East Carolina. It was kind of impressive because they were playing their one of their backup quarterbacks, Braxton Woodson, I think is his name, and he struggled through 2.5 straight quarters of football, and then suddenly found his ability to play quarterback, and it was just amazing. The only reason I'm talking about this game, obviously, is because the Army Navy game it's less than 2 weeks away. I know it's amazing to say that we finally reached this nexus in time where literally the next game after this weekend is going to be the Army Navy game at FedEx Field in Landover, Maryland. And we'll all be there. We'll be rooting for the Army team and cheering them on to victory. The big question mark for Navy: who's going to play quarterback? And observation I made coming out of that game, I don't know if it was a psychological decoy type ploy, but Horvath was dressed up for the game. He was suited up, but it had already been announced before the game that he would not play. And when Woodson was struggling, they put in Gutierrez, I think is his name, the other backup quarterback, before they put Woodson back in. At no time did they turn to Horvath. Instead, Horvath was just holding a clipboard, suited up on the sidelines.
Is Horvath a senior?
No, he's
Okay,
Cal.
so he just wasn't dressed up for.
No, he was dressed. He was suited up for the game.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. He was suited up for the game, even though they had announced that he would not play that day. He was suited up. Now, was it a psychological ploy? What was the signal that was being sent here? This, the sands of time through the hourglass are going to be telling the truth about what's going on with Horvath. Is he hurt? Is he getting healthy? We're not going to know this until we walk onto the field in Landover, Maryland for the Army Navy game to see if he's actually going to play. So I just thought that it was really odd on Navy's part that they made the announcement before the game. I mean, literally, it had already gone out to, ESPN and everyone else announced that Horvath was not going to play that day. But then there he was on the sidelines suited up. So I suspect there might be a little bit of subterfuge on the part of the Naval Academy, and it's fine. They can do that. But I will tell you, and don't find me complimenting my squid brethren very often, but I will tell you that Braxton Woodson, once he found himself, he really played an amazing game in the second half of that game against ECU, a game in which Navy was the underdog by about 4 points. And they really poured it on ECU in the second half, and they suddenly could not do any wrong. So, believe me, Navy's going to be ready. And I'm not, I don't want to get ahead of myself. We're talking about Tulane right now in the AAC championship game, but we know as soon as that game is over, the next 0-0 and go 1-0 is Navy.
And Sam, how much do you think Army's going to be affected by playing these 3 tough games before Navy not getting the bye week?
The only thing that it affects is their health, and that's the only concern I have.
That's what it is.
That's the only thing that it affects.
They're beat up. Recovery time.
Right now, the Army defense is beat up. They're like a triage unit, and it's still a question mark what players they're going to have on the field. How many are they going to have to rotate this Friday? Is Cody Harris Miller going to be back at nose tackle? I don't know. But it's next man up. And the only thing that is a question mark about these games is not whether or not Army's going to be mentally and preparation from practice ready to play Navy. They'll be ready to play Navy. It doesn't matter. They could play one game today and suit up tomorrow and play the Army Navy game the very next day. They'd be ready for the Army Navy game, and
That's not ideal.
that's a fact. But the challenge is the grind of this schedule. You think Notre Dame was a tough game physically, and it took a toll on Army, especially on defense. UTSA was no different. UTSA's offense took a toll on Army's defense. Army's defense played an outstanding game, but you noticed a lot of injuries that happened, and we don't know what the status of those injuries are going into Friday. We all know the precautionary tale of the last time Navy was in the AAC championship game when they lost to Temple, I think something like 35-14, and Navy was having a fabulous season, and they had a quarterback named Will Worth, and he was having an amazing season. And on one play against Temple in the AAC championship game, they lost both Will Worth and one of their slot backs to freak injuries that put them out for the season. And therefore, 1 week later, when they played Army, they did not have their starting quarterback. So, these are always concerns that we have, but Army's next man up philosophy is if you are the next man on the depth, then you are ready to play. If your number's called, you're ready to play. You don't question why you're not being played right now. You know why you're not being played right now, but you know what your role is. Your role is to be ready when your number's called. And Army's done a really good job of that, especially of late.
They're going to need to, as you said, with the injuries on defense. We'll talk a little bit with Coach Nate Woody on that tomorrow post practice. Okay, well, let's wrap up with our lightning round, and let's go through it. Richard, what do you see as the score
Okay.
of Temple and Army on Friday night at Michie Stadium?
Okay, Ken, just quickly. Air Force defeated San Diego State 31-20.
Okay.
Navy defeated East Carolina 34-20. Friday night championship game, Army against Tulane. This is going to be an Army victory. I'm going to go 20. I'm going to go 31-17. Army is going to come out on top with a victory.
Okay, 31-17 says the Sage. Richard, okay. Sam, what do you got?
Yeah, like we already mentioned, Tulane, they had an extra couple of days of practice. They've already smoked Navy this year. But in all of their preparation for Army this week, they lost something on Thursday night, and that was home field advantage. They wanted home field advantage. They wanted to bring Army into Ullman Stadium and have a bunch of rabid Tulane fans making all kinds of noise. And they wanted, most importantly, why they wanted home field advantage. They wanted that warm New Orleans temperatures and humidity going on. They wanted a night where it was 75 degrees and just beautiful and people were wearing shorts in the stands. Well, guess what? They don't get it. They lost home field advantage. They got to come to West Point, and they're saying that wind chill factors are going to be in the single digits on Friday night at West Point. So welcome to West Point, New York. And that I'm telling you, during their week of practice, they can line up the prep team to run what they think is a derivative of Army's offense. They can run up the prep team to run what they think is what they expect out of Army's defense. But what they cannot do is simulate the game time temperature and environment that they're going to experience at Michie Stadium. This is a finesse team, and any finesse team that plays in warm weather all the time, that tells you that wind chill in the teen is not going to affect their ability to be finesse is lying. That ball stings coming out of the quarterback's hands, at 80 miles an hour when it hits your glove, when the temperature with the wind chill is like 8 degrees, and it makes it harder to catch. It makes your body stiffer. It makes every time you get popped by a defender, it makes it hurt more. It makes it every time Bryson Daly runs over you as a defensive back, it hurts a lot more, and you don't want to get up and be run over again. And I think this is an important intangible about Friday night that Tulane does not have the ability to prepare for other than just saying that we're going to be ready for cold weather. And that being said, I think that that's going to be a big edge, plus the fact that Army has been laser focused and locked down this entire season on the next game. They don't look past the next game. They get ready for the next game. Army's getting ready for Tulane, and they're going to be ready for Tulane. And they just came off of a gritty, close win against a very good UTSA team that was hot. And that was a huge confidence builder to know what you can do when you're down and to be able to come back in a close game like that in cold temperatures. And they're going to be ready to do the same thing on Friday night. And so, with all of that being said, my dissertation is complete. Here comes my score. I will be in Mikey Stadium bundled up in my best Army gear. And I'm looking forward to watching Army win in a historic game, their very first conference championship game in the storied history of Army football. They're going to win it. They're going to win the American Athletic Conference by beating Tulane by a final score of 38-28.
38-28, says the Colonel, Sam Houston, who I guarantee will be prepared for the game to be up in the stands. And so I agree. I think Army's playing well. The injuries on defense worry me. As you said, I don't know if Corey Harris Miller, the nose tackle, has had a great season, is going to be back. Kyle Lewis is going to be out. They don't expect him back. So you got two starters off your defensive line. What they do have is Andon Thomas and Caleb Fortner at inside linebacker who are playing lights out. The awards come out from the American Athletic Conference on Tuesday, and I think those guys are going to get mentioned. Coach Munkin was even already talking about the two of them being captains next year on the team. Look for Army to grind it out on the running game. Pass only when they see an opening. And, it gets a little hard to play defense when you're in that kind of, it could be well below freezing on Friday night. So if you're going to the game, bundle up. Dress like you're going skiing is how I used to do it. But Tulane's got a good offense. They average 39 points a game, and they're balanced. They rush the ball 212 yards a game. And so I'm going to go with, I think it's going to be a little bit lower scoring. I'm going to go 24-17. Give the field goal kickers some credit. I think it's going to be a little bit lower scoring game in the weather and both teams running the clock, running the ball. So Richard had Tulane scoring 17 points as well. So Sam, so we will see you on Friday.
Yep.
And we'll look forward to seeing you at the game. And
Looking
Richard
forward
will
to
be
it.
watching from sunny and warm Palm Beach, Florida.
Yep.
And you'll be watching us out in the snow. I have to say I'll be upstairs, so I'll be pretty comfortable and very fortunate. But we'll have pregame activity. The West Point band will be out, and the full corps of cadets will be there.
Yes.
Sitting in the north end zone. Coach Summerall mentioned them in the press conference today that they were all sitting behind him the last time he went to Mikey Stadium. But he knew how to quiet them down by shutting out Army that day. But I don't think it's going to happen this time around. I think Army's going to grind it out on offense, and I'm just a little concerned about the defense. If the injury factor, but they've always been a bend don't break defense.
Yep.
Nate Woody has been. I bumped into him in the hallway in the football building after practice today, and the wheels are turning. Believe me,
Oh yeah.
he's getting his defense prepared. He is a mastermind at it. Great
Yep.
guy. It's really fun to talk with him and see a true, professional, craft his football plan for a game.
Yep.
So, any other comments?
Yeah, I did want to make mention. Uh, Lots of speculation going on about what bowl game is Army going to be in, and things like that. So here's the deal, folks. The college football playoff selection is going to be made next week, and Army still, believe it or not, is still showing having a small percentage chance of getting into that. I don't expect it, but what will happen probably before we have our next huddle is we will know what bowl game Army is going to. And because that stuff, those invitations and everything are going to be going out after the conference championship weekend, which is this weekend. So all of the different FBS conferences are having their championship games this weekend, including the AAC, and we'll know where the chips lie and where everything's going to fall out. So we should be able to start making our travel plans next week to where Army is going to play postseason in a bowl game.
What do you think the chances are of ending up at the Independence Bowl in Shreveport? Their representative has been at the last three Army games.
I think it's pretty good. I honestly, if I was to rank order bowls, I think the Independence Bowl leads the pack for Army. And there are a few reasons for that. One, the very first reason is that Army was invited to the Independence Bowl during the COVID year, and the Independence Bowl got canceled. And it was very unfortunate. And I thought that it was canceled for all the wrong reasons. And as a result, Army was left without a bowl game until another team dropped out of the Liberty Bowl, and the Liberty Bowl graciously invited Army to come to that. And so I think the Independence Bowl feels a debt of gratitude that they need to extend back to Army. Another reason is the Independence Bowl has an AAC tie-in, and therefore it would match the AAC tie-ins. I'm not sure how it lines up with AAC champion. And then the third is that Army, when it was an independent, and as we know, up until this season, Army was an independent. Army had a contract with ESPN Bowls, and if they became bowl eligible, they would appear in the Independence Bowl one year, and they would appear in the Armed Forces Bowl the next year, and stuff like that. So there's all types of roads that lead to Shreveport, Bossier City, Louisiana, for Army, and so that I'm not saying that Independence Bowl is going to be where they go, but I would just say that if I had to pick one out of a hat and make my prediction, I would say that if Army does not squeeze itself into the college football playoff, they probably will end up going to Shreveport, Bossier City for the Independence Bowl, and I'll be there.
Yeah, so and I'm going to get Richard to come over. Yeah, the people there have been very gracious. I interviewed the president of the Independence Bowl, and they talked about how much they respect the military. And of course, not far away from there is a big army base. Is the name of it Polk? Is that the?
Yeah, they changed the name. I'm remiss of keeping up with all these army base names. They change it, but we all know it is Fort Polk. Everybody knows it is Fort Polk,
Yeah.
and Shreveport Bossier City has a big military population as well because there's Barksdale Air Force Base there in Shreveport Bossier City. So there's a lot of military retirees that live in the area, and I was at the Army Independence Bowl in '96, and I'm sure Army would love the opportunity to atone for how that game ended. It was the Ronnie McKay year. The '96 team went 9-0 before losing to Syracuse, and then they rolled into the Independence Bowl 10-1 with the Commander in Chief trophy, and they played Auburn. And Auburn took a big lead, and Army mounted the most furious comeback in the fourth quarter. I think they scored 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter and were driving for another one as time was closing down within the minute. And they got down to the Auburn 7 yard line, third down, and third and goal from the 7. And there were about 30 seconds to go on the clock. Auburn's defensive linemen were literally just standing up with their hands on their hips. They were so tired. And rather than taking a shot at the end zone, which everyone believed that we should have with Ronnie Makeda because he was just a superstar, the coach elected to go for the field goal to tie it up and put it into overtime. And the kicker, who had never missed from inside 20-yard line, he missed. And the game was over, and Auburn won.
Yeah. Well, we may Army may get a chance, another shot at the Independence Bowl. We will see. And is that all? Are all the decisions made on Sunday, Sam? Do they make the announcements on that? Sunday the day for that?
I think that some of the smaller bowl games probably make announcements pretty quickly. But there are a lot of teams that are on the bubble for college football playoff. And so, if I would say that if Army, when Army wins Friday night, they're on the bubble for the college football playoffs. So I think before any announcement about a bowl game would be made, it would have to come after the college football playoff bracket is announced.
Yeah, oh, for sure. For sure. Well, we'll see. We'll look forward to a lot of 3 exciting games left for Army this year.
Yep.
Chances for historic wins that'll be talked about for decades afterwards. And
Yep.
it's going to be a small part of it and observing and reporting on it. So let's say thank you to Richard Miller in Florida.
My pleasure, Ken. Thank you.
And say thank you to Colonel Sam Houston at the Beat Navy Studio in Huntsville, Alabama, coming up to West Point on Friday night. We'll look forward to seeing you there.
My pleasure. Look forward to it. I'll be dressed warmly and beat the green wave.
Yeah, that's the key. Dress warmly, as I always say, like you're going skiing, and then you can be comfortable for the evening. Always want to shout out to the Special Operations Warrior Foundation. They provide scholarships and mentoring to families from the special operations community that have lost someone in military service. They do great work. So we'll say goodnight. Thank you for watching. And again, this is Ken Kreitzer for Cam Vets Media. We cover cadets, midshipmen, the military, and veterans proudly since 2008. Thanks for watching. Have a good evening.